Welcome to Yes Also. I'm Susie Barrett. My guest today is James Mastraieni. James is a huge part of the LA improv scene, both as an improviser and a teacher, and also a producer. He produces the Shared Experience show, Sunset Social, the improvised sitcom How I Met Your Sitcom, and its spin-off improvised sitcom Happy Hour at Logan's. And he's trained and performed everywhere: Second City, IO West, UCB. He did the Second City cruise ship tours for a while. He was a part of the longtime IO West show Orpheus Roy, and his UCB Herald team Outside Dog graduated to their own show Outside Dog Gets 1 Star. James is a real improv philosopher. He spends a lot of time thinking about improv, thinking about what makes it good and what can make it better, and he gave me a lot to think about in this interview. I hope you feel the same way. As always, make sure to head to Instagram and check out Yes Also Pod for pics of James. And remember to send us your improv questions to yesalsopod@gmail.com. We're getting ready to do another Q&A episode, and we'd love to hear from you. But for now, the episode. Hey, man.
Hey, man.
Thanks for being here, man.
I'm so excited. I'm so
me
excited.
too. Yeah. What a get.
Oh, you.
No, you.
Not me.
Can't
you.
believe I got myself.
Yeah.
I want to start in the present, and then we can jump around from there. But
Let's do it.
The biggest fish to fry is you've started the Shared Experience Studio,
Yeah.
SES. Talk to me about the origin of that, what it is, what your philosophy is. Boil it down for me.
Okay. Awesome. So yeah, I guess to really describe it, I think maybe I should go down memory lane
Ooh.
a little bit. Because like really the shared experience, and I guess I'll define it. I'll leave a mystery for the listeners here, and I'll give the definition of it philosophically and stuff as I go along. So, but I actually started this journey in stand-up comedy. I was a huge comedy nerd.
I didn't know you did stand-up.
Yeah,
Man, this is wild.
started when I was 17.
No kidding.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. Dropped out of college. I started. I'm from Pittsburgh, so I was doing stand-up in Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Akron, Toronto.
Wow,
like
you were working stand-up, booking gigs.
Correct.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, opener gigs, MC
Sure.
gigs. It wasn't like I was headlining because I was,
But you were buying groceries.
I was buying groceries. Yeah. For sure. And so, I had moved to LA when I was 21. And I got a job at the Improv on Melrose,
Which is a stand-up
which is
club.
a stand-up. Ironically, is a stand-up comedy club. And so my job there was as an evaluator, as a potential, future booker. I was a showroom manager. It was my job to make sure that the shows ran well, and then also on top of that to evaluate the comedians. But the way that I was trained and the way that I had to focus it early on was always on the audience, right? Was what is their experience? What is, in terms of less of my personal opinion on it, and more of, how did the comedians do with this audience? How consistent were they? That whole thing.
And those metrics are just very black and white. Like how much laughter is there? How
Absolutely.
little distraction and heckling?
Yes.
Did anyone walk out? Like
Exactly.
those kind of like major tentpole.
All of that stuff,
Yeah.
right? And so the entirety of the experience and to take notes on it, and how did comedians deal with those different things? How did they deal with a heckler? Because they wanted all of these notes. And so by the time I got into improv, which was not that long afterwards, I really, I fell in love with it very quickly. Second City was right next door to the improv. So I got a discount on classes. So I was like, I went and took classes over there. I had already kind of trained my brain to be thinking of the audience, right? And so this was like a constant, even as I move forward, there was just something always in my brain thinking about the audience.
And also from you doing stand-up, you're trained in that,
Absolutely.
right? Like you're working the same material every night with little changes to see what works the best, what lands the hardest, what's
100%.
consistently a hit with the audience. Yeah.
Yeah. And even in my observations of watching all of these great comedians during this period that I worked there, and I was there almost every night of the week, was that like the best, most consistent comedians were not the ones that were just plowing through their choreographed act, regardless of the audience. It was the ones that were finding synthesis with the audience, ones that were gauging what this, is this audience capable of handling, nuance or more complex setups, or is this a dick joke only audience? Is this an audience,
Yeah.
And we've all been there. Even as improvisers, we're like, man, when in this show, if I do a big character, they love it. If I try to play subtle, they don't. Like,
it's something I love about improv.
Same.
I've talked about it on here that the audience is determining the course of the show. It's
absolutely.
Really quick, just as a sidebar, what was your favorite stand-up joke? Can we get a little taste of your style?
The one that I told?
Yeah.
Oh, my favorite.
I want to know what
my
your.
God. I don't even know if I remember any of my stand-up. I remember.
They were all dick jokes, right?
They were all dick jokes.
Yeah,
I mean, I was a white guy in my late teens, early 20s. I'm
Let's
sure
get you
it wasn't.
canceled, buddy. Come on.
Yeah, absolutely. I do remember. I can't remember like the whole setup punchline of it, but I do remember. Because it's funny, my uncle brought this up to me. He's in his 80s recently, and he was, I saw him and I hadn't seen him in a while, and he kind of remembered a little bit of this joke. I hadn't even remembered it, but it was basically about like prioritizing drug companies prioritizing Viagra over like cancer medication. Yeah. I wish I could remember but it was, that was like the gist of it.
Years ago when you were doing the I'm Too Effing High show, which is a show where you and other comedians would get high and then do comedic challenges. You did a bit in that where you were just reading high thoughts out of your phone notes.
Oh, yeah.
Like to jazz music. And one of them I still quote. It's to me, it's a perfect stand-up joke. It was something like, it would be really hard to convey that you were robbing the bank teller, but not the bank.
Yeah.
It's really funny.
Thank you. Yeah, I remember that.
Okay.
And it would be hard.
It would be.
How would you say it, right?
Right.
Like if
Give me all your money. your personal
not the
money.
bank, you.
I'm a small-time crook. I don't want to. I can't handle jail time. I just need like $20 to go get.
If
lunch.
I rob the bank, I'm fucked.
Yeah.
But if I rob you,
come on, lady, put it in the bag.
Yeah.
You still have a big leather bag. Even though it's just a 20.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're primed for noticing the audience. You've realized that all the most successful comedians have sort of a synthesis with reading the audience, adjusting.
Yeah.
They're flexible. They're able to kind of surf the waves that are there rather than plow through.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so as I developed over the years, and as a comedian, and then or improviser, and then also as a teacher, I started to think about it more and more from that angle of like, not just the output of what the performers on stage are doing, but and understanding how to produce the comedy, but also to understand and to get better at producing the comedy on stage, to understand how it's being consumed by the audience. How is the communication landing? How is us, working our way from setup to payoff and that sort of thing? How is that landing? And so I started to call it the shared experience and like teaching, because I felt like I'm really big into philosophy as well. And, I think a lot of philosophy is just like naming shit, just like looking at the abstract and going, what could I call that? And then just calling it something. And, And so I started calling it the shared.
Busted philosophers.
What'd you say?
Philosophers just got busted.
Put on blast.
All you're doing is naming shit that's already there.
Take that, Hegel.
Finally, someone gave it to Hegel.
I know, finally.
Sorry,
his dialectic came for him.
Named it.
Yeah, there it is. And so to me, to give a definition to it, essentially I describe it as being the abstract connective tissue that exists between the audience and the performers on stage. And I think that it is, the more that I think about it, and look, it's real kind of like, it's real heady, abstract stuff, but it's very simple. But I think that it's as big as the expectations in the show, right? And it's as small as moment to moment, and just keeping the audience. Because what we know from neuroscience, the reason everybody's tuning into this podcast is to hear about neuroscience.
I am.
The brain works through the predictive process, right? Same as comedy, the predictive process of expectations, and we're constantly uploading our expectations, our predictions of what's going to happen. And scientists actually did a study of comedy using peekaboo with children, and then also studying adults watching comedy.
Man, I use peekaboo as an example too. It's like our first comedic
it's our
training.
First joke.
Yeah.
It's not taught to any other culture. It is inherent in all human cultures.
Wow.
Which was like a part of this study. It's like because the scientists also were like, this might be the first joke, right? And what they found was that when the baby was in on the predictive process of what is going to happen next in peekaboo, the baby laughed. When the parent went outside the realm of expectations, the baby was confused. So when peekaboo was like, you open your eyes and it's the parent and now they've just got a funny face, they laugh. But if they open their eyes and instead of the parent, it's their favorite stuffed toy, they're confused. They weren't expecting that.
Gotcha. Yeah. But correct me if I'm wrong, because if I am, then I need to update the firmware on my example. But I always use peekaboo as an example of like it takes a couple times of peekaboo before the kid gets the pattern. Once they've got it, the third time gets a huge laugh, and that's like the game of the scene. And then after like the fifth time, sixth time, they get a little bored. The laughter dies down, so you have to find ways to heighten it. So maybe you peek again, but that's where you have the funny face, or you peek to the side, or you wait longer and that's a long time, and the kid, and then you surprise them with one. Do those fit as outside the realm of expectations?
No, not at all.
Okay.
Not at all. Because if I remember correctly from this study, and I read this a few years ago, but my understanding is like more like randomness. The sample size you're talking about in terms of the patternization like makes a lot of sense. But imagine if like, okay, we got the baby to laugh and we've done it 5 times. We need to surprise them. If the surprise is too surprising or random, then
got it.
Right?
It can't be too different.
It can't be too different.
Right. So that does track also with like how we teach game and hit it. You're
100%.
heightening that thing. You're not just doing something.
Absolutely.
It's if this, then what? It's not if anything, then what?
100%.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's the thing is like, you have to stay within that realm of expectation.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't have to do anything. You can do.
No, you do. You do. You get arrested and taken to parent prison.
Yeah. The old improv police. Whoop whoop. They come behind you.
Yep.
Yeah.
All of their cop cars have a finger on the top, going like
a little
this.
wavy finger. Yeah. But I talk about like. Earning your way from fact to fiction, which I think is definitely in the realms of that, right? Fact being plausible, conceivable, fiction being more abstract, more absurd, but earning being what you're talking about, right? Which is the idea of like, you create the pattern and I mean like honestly so much of this stuff I learned from you over the years.
Really?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Goodness.
Yeah, for sure. I mean people listening may not know Susie's like my mentor. Susie
Jeez,
when people oh yeah, you know this, I
mean
yeah, you're the most incredible advocate not only for this art form but also I feel like I've learned from, or I've studied for people listening to this podcast, and I'm sure like all the big names, all the greats, all the big the Bessers and the Napiers and the Kakowskis, all these people. Susie's the best. Susie's the best I ever had.
Thanks, James.
Yeah.
I'll
No,
write you
thank
your
you.
check after we're done
Thank
recording.
Thank you.
Um,
With the shared experience, with the predictive process, which is all like, it's definitely very dry, very, kind of analytical. I also think in a lot of ways it comes naturally to a lot of us. If we've consumed comedy or if we've consumed, I think a lot of like even narrative stuff, I think it comes, we start to understand, patterns are, something humans see. There are no stories really. Everything is kind of random, I think, in our universe. But another like quick little science thing, neuroscience, because that's what this is. We create patterns and we write narratives and stories in our brain so we can save energy. Because our brain takes up the most energy in our body, and without being able to create these stories, we would be processing every fucking thing that was happening all the time, and we'd need a nap at like 9 a.m.
Hear me out. I'm trying to drop some weight. I don't have time to exercise. I'm going to stop telling stories to myself and finding patterns, burn quadruple the calories.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That would work.
Get on the pattern plan.
Oh, God, the pattern plan.
Get on the pattern plan. Train with me 3 days a week. That's all you need.
God, Susie's her workout plan's working, but she doesn't know what doors are anymore. She's putting her spaghetti in her eye. That's wild.
Yeah.
It makes sense though. It's like we need to shortcut stuff. I mean, they say that most of why we dream is we're coding into memory what happened during the day, so that our brain has these like microchips of each experience, and then playing out what could happen in hypothetical scenarios so that you know what to do or something. Yeah.
That's wild.
It's wild.
Yeah.
Okay, so all of this leads to
yes.
So you you're like, I want to make a school that teaches this, or did it just kind of grow more slowly and organically than that?
Yeah. Well, this is a little bit of a different side of this story. This story that doesn't exist, but I did create in my brain.
Great, and I'm not listening because I want to burn some.
My journey. So, I've been in LA for a long time, and one of the consistent things for me has been being a part of institutions, and being a part of institutions that eventually let me down, and institutions that eventually either forget about, and by me, I don't just mean me, I mean the collective me.
The royal me.
Yeah. And, I think from my experience of, going through, starting with the improv, really, and Second City and IO and now UCB, right? And kind of seeing how different aspects of the power structures of that and if the shared experience is thinking about the audience in terms of the show, the shared experience studio is thinking about the comedians and the performers in terms of the structure of the actual studio, right? I don't think that's always been the case. In fact, I'd probably venture to guess that it's never been the case in most of these institutions, including UCB. Today, where I've been a part of UCB since 2006, and it is what it is today. I think acknowledging what it is, and I should say to listeners, this is a reflection of my own opinions and feelings. I don't want to put this on you or your show or anything like that.
I will not let you. I have a very strong boundary and a healthy understanding of what is your shit and what is mine.
Perfect.
Shout out to my therapist.
Good.
Go for it. I want to hear your experience or your point of view. So what were you going to say about UCB? That is not my opinion.
So, UCB has in my opinion, it's gone full institution, and a part of that, it's owned by private equity now, as we know, and if you want to Google private equity, listener, and see what that outcome always ends up as, you will find that it always ends in pushing really, really hard for a quick uptick in profits, only to sell at its peak, leaving behind distraught workers, community members, employees, that sort of thing. It's really, really common. I'd venture to guess that's going to be the outcome of the Upright Citizens Brigade.
Sounds like a blast.
Yeah, it's super fun. It's super fun.
Super great for
and that's not
comedy.
even including the predatory prices that they're putting on for young people with, moving to Hollywood with dreams. And so, with this criticism that I have, I can only criticize and not potentially maybe think of a way to help be a part of the solution. I've been in LA and Hollywood for a long time. After the pandemic, I think that, I was working on a TV show and it got picked up and then it got canceled because of the pandemic. And so I'm like, probably accepting that the Hollywood dreams that I had all those years probably has passed by for me, which is, sail, don't row, right? And so kind of
dreams of what specifically?
Having a television show or creating a show or show running or, that sort of being a writer on a show, that sort of thing. Not something I'm abandoning completely.
You're still young.
I'm still young. I'm still only, well, I'll let the audience guess how old I am by my voice.
By the sound of your voice.
But this isn't me saying this as like a woe is me sort of, thing. It's more of like the journey of my life has led me to this point where I have an opportunity and if I can sail, not row, accept, kind of what life continues to show me of a collection of what I love and what I'm good at and what I can do for others or and so it's kind of led me to this path where I'm trying to create a studio that is maybe a school. I don't know. I kind of think of it more as like a comedy think tank.
I love that.
Not like a driving ideology, but instead a place where comedians can come together and offer mentorship and guidance. And because with the assembly line you get at an institution like UCB, I think the first thing to go is mentorship. And I was very lucky. I described you as my mentor, and I believe that. I mean that. And part of my growth was because I did have somebody like you to turn to and be like, because you were coaching my Herald team, I was studying with you in boot camp, like ask you questions about my instrument, about, what I'm doing wrong, what I'm doing right, like that guidance. Without it, I don't think I'd be as good of an improviser as maybe I like to think that I am.
It was weird that you would show up to practices with your clarinet and you were like, "What's wrong with my instrument?" And
I was confused.
Like, yeah.
I was confused.
Yeah.
And you would gently, put the clarinet down and teach me that we're not playing an actual instrument. I was very naive in those days.
But yeah, this sounds similar to like something like boot camp, where rather than a program with a beginning, middle, end, or like you have to graduate this to get this,
Correct.
It's or like any specific concrete goal. It's more like a sandbox where
Yeah.
you can kind of stretch your arms and legs and figure out what your style is or what.
Yeah.
But in this case, in your think tank, which I love that
Yeah.
comedy think tank. You particularly have this overarching view that we should consider the audience and
Yes.
whatever. Yeah. So when you're teaching and coaching, do you roll that into what you're teaching and coaching, or how do the students do that practically in a practice where there is no audience except you, or what's happening there?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I try to teach or coach from a place of like, okay, so I am your audience, but I'm also a fellow improviser, and kind of understand and know the technique. And so I'm trying to help the improvisers on stage understand what it is, what the expectations they're setting up, the predictive process they're setting up with the things that they're saying is or could possibly happen, right? Taking inventory early on. What are you saying about this? Your who, your where, your what, all of that sort of like basic stuff, right? And then trying to build the instincts towards what forward looks like. Trying to build the instincts towards once we understand what's happening on stage, right? And I think that there's all sorts of different ways of looking at the information that you're pulling, especially if you're talking about premise, right? I think there's a shared experience invested in premise where the audience kind of has these. I like to use a lot of food metaphors. So I compare an opening to like a menu. And our menu, just like restaurants, have signature dishes. And so, when an audience is taking in an opening, they're laughing at and pointing out the things that restaurant is known for.
Yep.
And the signature dishes in that opening, not that, we can still go away satisfied if we go to a restaurant and don't eat what they're known for.
Yeah, or only order a side.
Exactly.
Yeah, you're not going to die of starvation.
But you might leave going like, I really am still curious about that, steak fritas that I didn't have.
Right.
Or steak frites,
yeah.
Frites, yeah.
But it could be either, depending on what the audience wants. If they want fritas.
Exactly. Yeah, if they want a little Latin spin on it.
Right. And that's such a good analogy because, when the audience is taking in an opening, there are definitely shiny objects, and those are so satisfying when we pay those off. It's also what the audience is going to remember the most because it's what they were tickled by. They might not remember the sides. They glanced at that part of the menu.
Absolutely.
And also, by laughing at these like three prominent ideas, they've seen a giant roast chicken go by. They saw like a sizzling fajita pan and a dessert with a sparkler in it. They're like, oh, what are those?
Yes.
When a broccolini arrives at the table, it's like, oh, but I saw that.
Yes. Yeah.
Where'd that sparkler thing go?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And sometimes the broccolini is like the improviser's own, which there's nothing wrong with this, right? But an individual improviser might see the broccolini and be like, I think I can make a dish out of this.
Mm-hmm.
But the audience was never thinking about broccolini as a dish. And as a side, maybe it should stay, maybe that's something you do in your, fourth or fifth scene of the show.
Right.
As opposed to like, this place is known for their rotisserie chicken.
Right.
Why don't you get that first and see what it is everybody's talking about?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's not go too off menu here.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's interesting too. Sometimes I wonder if improvisers, it's like we are people with curious brains and we are trained to find patterns and things, and we're trained to apply our comedic instincts to whatever appears in our life.
Yeah.
So if someone as an improviser is tickled by a teeny tiny thing because it's more of a challenge to like spin that, or it's not as expected as these other things. Yeah. I wonder if sometimes when people have been doing it a while, it's like, well, but I'm tired of playing with the normal sandbox toys.
Sure.
I want to see what happens if I bring a spoon in the sandbox. And it's like, well, but the audience like
it's self-indulgent.
Yeah, you got to fry the big fish first for an audience. Yeah, it's
and like it's totally we can have moments of self-indulgence, I think, and like that's okay. But also, and this is something that was brought up, I think, in the episode with Will, which I really loved a lot, which is like, but it should be funny, and it should be we want it to be accessible to people watching it.
Yeah, because we are selling it as a comedy show.
100%.
Like if you want to do exploratory improv and as experimental theater or whatever, or just as a piece, that's fantastic. But you can't sell a ticket to an audience for a comedy show and then
Well, and before we started this, I was talking about this. Another institution, IO, that I used to work for, I used to teach for. I got into an argument with them. I eventually left because I kept getting reprimanded for in my classes saying to the students, asking them what they found funny.
Ridiculous.
And using the word funny. And my retort, in the email back, was it literally says comedy and cocktails on the side of your building.
Yeah.
And you're telling me not to use or ask what is funny. And the reason why I couldn't do that is because funny was UCB's branding.
Oh, Jesus.
And I was like, this is fucking crazy. This is who is this for?
Right.
Yeah.
Also, what do you mean it's their brand? They don't own comedy. Oh God, that's so funny.
Their whole thing was, no, UCB explores what's funny. We explore what's interesting.
Nope.
Yeah.
No. Then,
and I was like,
yeah.
Well, good luck selling tickets.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting to who?
To who?
Yeah. What? Who were those emails coming from? Was that Sharna?
Oh, you betcha.
Oh, I betcha. Wow. Yeah. That is really something. And not surprising.
Yeah, for sure.
I have
not
so
surprising
many.
at all.
Yeah.
Shout out to Sharna.
Shout out to Sharna.
One of the meanest people I've ever met.
I'll give one tiny example. When I was in classes at IO in Chicago, I came to watch the shows one night, and I was sitting. The bar was in the room in the theater, but it was kind of towards the back, and I was sitting on a bar stool watching the show. And Sharna was passing through, had something to tell the bartender or something, and was just passing through the room and then on her way out the other door. And as she paused to do whatever she had to do at the bar, she heard one line of the show and it didn't get a laugh. And she went, "She's cut." And that girl got cut from Herald Night, the next schedule.
Oh my God. Jesus Christ.
So if you don't care about what's funny, why are you cutting someone? Yeah.
Get Sharna on the phone.
Get her on the phone.
Yeah.
No, please don't. That's nuts.
Yeah.
So, but did you take classes there before you taught there, or
I did?
You did.
Yeah.
So you took classes at Second City, IO, and UCB
at the same exact time.
Really?
Yeah. It was such a bad idea.
Yeah. What a mind melter.
It was. I would go to one place and I would make a move or do something that would be rewarded at one place and lauded at the other, right? And I think that it was just too much.
It's like a dog that's in agility training and bomb sniffing at the same time.
100%.
The bomb sniffing guys are like, get off that table.
Yeah.
The drugs aren't there.
100%.
What was your perception or now that you have distance and processing time on your side, what would you describe as the subjective difference between the three theaters or between the three trainings? What was your experience?
I love this question because I think I think you and I are so similar in the way that we see the way we see this, right? And I think that obviously there's so many different approaches to this. And with Second City, even in the history of it, we know that improv was definitely not its guiding force, right? It's satirical sketch, and improv I felt was kind of a way of training you and maybe a way of but there was also no and IO has this a little bit too. It's not like you're trying to write together, right? To me, game is a guide but relationship is the destination, right? And I think that with IO, you were taught a lot about relationship, which is abstract, so is game, but it was never. It always kind of like felt like two people making big unconnected emotional choices and trying to figure out as they went along how to make sense of it.
Mm-hmm.
And with UCB, that style, the style of game, I think provides a guide or a structure towards going, okay, from the beginning, if we can gather, the context of the situation, if we can gather, what stands out from that, breaks the status quo, let's explore the breaking or the unusual thing or the absurd thing or whatever, and allow the exploration and expansion of that to be what we try to write on our feet together.
Yeah.
I've always felt like UCB leaned more writery. I always felt like IO and Second City leaned more for actors.
Mm-hmm.
I think what I've learned from both is that improv is 50% writing, 50% acting, right? And we're you want to be good at both. Like if we separated those things, no writer wants to hand their great script to a bad actor, and no great actor wants to receive a bad script from a writer. So I think we want to try to develop both of those skills. And I think that the nuance that you maybe, I think IO it does a lot more form stuff too than UCB traditionally has, which I really respect a lot. Like trying different forms,
Yeah, I love
develop
form stuff.
Same. But I think that I guess IO was always a little, or at least the version of IO that I know. I didn't experience the version of IO that was like driven by your like Craig Kukowski's and TJ Jack, exactly,
Messing, yeah.
Susan Messing or
that was my era of classes, like
So there you
2000,
go.
2001. But it doesn't sound entirely different from what you're describing.
Oh, okay.
If game happened, it was by accident and we didn't have a name for it.
Got it.
I remember hearing like game of the scene, but I didn't really know what that meant.
Yeah.
Also, I was like integrating a lot of info, so maybe they did teach it for a second and I couldn't take it in because my brain was overloaded.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was it felt meandery. It felt like when you hit on something fun to play, it was entirely an accident. And then it was so ephemeral, like it went away even by the end of the scene. It was like really hard. It felt hard to get two people on the same page. And it felt like you were spending the whole scene doing that. And then it got its first big laugh, and that's the sweep edit.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. When you finally figured out what the scene is about, that's when we edit it.
That's the ending.
I know. I did heralds at both theaters. I was on a herald team at IO. I was on a herald team at UCB. And my experiences doing herald at UCB were much, much more satisfying in terms. I think ultimately there's skills from both that you can, the nuances, the acting, the stuff that goes kind of in between all of the skeletal structural stuff, I think is really important. But if you don't have the skeleton, this is going to be a really macabre, gross metaphor, everybody. Without the skeleton, you've just got gross meat that's just like, squishy. And
you don't know if my meat is gross. You have not seen me without a skeleton.
I've heard.
There's no way you've heard.
Well,
from who?
But I'm not going to.
Was it Sharna?
It was
Did Sharna call my meat gross?
Get Sharna on the phone. Get her on the phone.
When you were talking about relationship being a guiding principle, and then talking about how it was like hard to sort of identify though, like what the thing was of the scene or whatever.
Yeah.
It occurred to me recently. I was thinking about this. Like a lot of biopics have come out recently, like Oppenheimer and Maestro. And, I don't know if you saw Maestro. I loved it.
I did not know.
It's great.
Yeah.
I think you would dig it.
It's on my very long list of things to watch.
Great.
Yeah.
Right behind the bucket list, and
I'm catching up.
the thing that occurred to me watching particularly that movie was, oh, right, like when you're taking source material from somebody's entire life, they're a real person who lived an entire life full of scenes and experiences and growth moments and journeys and blah blah blah. You have to choose as the writer director which of those multitude of stories you're going to tell. And I thought Bradley Cooper did a great job with that. It's like, there's much more to him than this story, but this is kind of the story of a narrow focus of like his relationships.
Totally.
Whereas I felt like, and I'm controversially did not like Oppenheimer, but to me,
I haven't seen that either. So.
They didn't pick one story. It was like his personal, his professional, his political life. They all kind of like reflected each other, but to me, it was like too broad, and it felt like three different movies. But in an improv scene, we have 3 minutes in the life of this couple or this teacher and student or whatever this relationship dynamic is. Like, we've got to get to something.
Yes.
We're not just exploring them and their multitudes. We have to like decide early on what it is the two of us are going to explore and play.
Yes.
Otherwise, the ship has sailed.
And you've lost the shared experience, right?
I have lost the shared experience.
Because the audience, they'll check out. They will look at the flighty, meandery, thing that you're doing. They won't feel included on the predictive process. And now they're starting to think about the groceries they have to buy on the way home. They're starting to think about, do they have enough for another beer? Do they,
Yeah, and coming back to your reprimanding email, we want to teach which scenes that are interesting.
Yeah.
You've got to be kidding me. What improviser in the world wants to stand on a stage doing a scene to silence and then gets off the stage and goes, I like that they found it interesting. Because also, you don't know.
Yeah.
Interested people are silent people.
Yeah.
Yes, you can feel an energy when people are compelled by something, and not every moment of a show needs to be filled with talking or laughter. Yes, we can be riveted, but
totally.
Well,
and it's so specific to comedy, right? And I think as comedians, we have to accept that, we chose to express ourselves comedically. That's the mode of expression that satisfies us, right? And with that comes this very harsh, very humbling aspect of this art form, which is very binary. If they like it, they laugh. If they don't laugh, or they're confused. Mm-hmm. And the measurement or the metrics of a good show are they laughed consistently versus they didn't. You wouldn't go, when you go to see a painting, you don't walk away from it going, I didn't hear a lot of gasps in the museum. So that painting sucked. Right. Or if you go to see a drama, if you go to see a play, you don't walk away going like, I guess it wasn't good because I didn't hear the audience all weeping the entire time.
Right.
Comedy's like the only thing that does that.
With that immediate, obvious, naked metric. Yeah.
It is. I see and understand your comedic take on this. I accept it. I like it. I want to see it more, or I don't.
Right.
And that's I mean, like, it is a brutally harsh thing that we subject ourselves to.
And but thrilling and fun and
absolutely. It's like the gambler's wager, right? It's like, nobody likes to lose, but is it worth it for that win?
Right? Yeah. And as you get more comfortable, the failure, quote unquote, shrinks and also matters less, and you do more scenes, and it all feels like the bank balance comes out on top.
Totally.
But I have to point out too, if an audience is coming to an improv show, they know that it's improvised. It's not like a sketch show where they're like, okay, this is written and rehearsed and this is going somewhere and I trust them. They've practiced this. They believe in this and they are working their way towards a punchline. We can be silent for a bit.
Yeah.
In an improv show, too much silence makes the audience deathly uncomfortable because they start to get worried that you don't have something or that you're not good or that you don't, they get the empathy goes off the charts.
Absolutely.
It's like, oh God, oh no, they don't know what to say.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. And the last thing we want in the shared experience is to lose control.
Right.
Or to give the audience either the power or make the audience feel like we don't have confidence, ability, skill,
right.
you know.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like, just to, you know, continue with this theory of this philosophy. Like, I think the shared experience, what you're saying too, also begins before the show starts, right? Walking into the theater, just like you said, there's a predictive process of expectations with sketch versus improv, right? Improv audiences usually are a little bit more forgiving of you know, moment to moment, or things that are a little bit clumsy, or things that are a little bit, you know, unpolished. Shakespeare. We talked about that, yes.
Shakespeare invented the prefix "un," so all "un" words are because of Willie S.
That's right.
Yeah.
I learned that right before we started recording.
I taught it. I am your mentor.
Yeah. That's my vocabulary mentor. And so I think that's that you know, when I'm talking about the shared experience, I think that is another thing that I truly think we can take into account as well with understanding the audience's experience of what they're going through.
Yeah. And I don't know what order these episodes are going to air in, but in my interview with Jess McKenna, she talks about like conveying to the audience a sense that you are confident and under control, and just faking that, because it transmits an air to the room that lets them know it's all good. There's a net under the tightrope. Nobody's going to get hurt. Laughs are coming, you know, even if you don't have something, but holding that space. And I talk to my students too about, I'm more and more getting into just true, honest connection in scenes, locking into your scene partner's eyes, reading what's going on. You know, it's my Meisner training too.
Totally.
But like that if somebody is listening in a connected and sensitive way, that silence, no matter how long it goes on, is more compelling and electric than 10 jokes told back to back. I'd rather have that and then an honest thing that produces a laugh. But still, I want, eventually, to again disagree with Sharna, eventually an audience wants the laugh. If it's just, or if it's slow, patient, serious improv and that's the gig, then we kind of know it going in,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that I like what you were saying about both confidence and seeking that connection, like how powerful that can be. I think that that's true, especially when it's done intentionally. When the people on stage are intentional in being like, we are going to invest our time and our energy into this particular type of play. What, if it's hypernaturalism, then we're trying to replicate, being a human being in the reality we exist in right now. And that comes with pauses, that comes with silences, that comes with all of these things, versus the panic,
I have to fill the space with it.
God, I have to say something. Everybody's
Right.
quiet on stage. I think that, I think you're totally right. And I also want to say a part of my theory of the shared experience too does not discount things like absurdism or surrealism. I just think that the audience needs to know that's what they're watching.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't make absurdism suddenly not comedy. Like it doesn't mean that Like who's a absurd? I guess. God, what are their names? It's
Penn
escaping.
and Teller,
No, not Penn and Teller. No, they're magicians.
which is absurd.
It is. Yeah, that is absurd
How
and surreal.
Man.
Um,
Are we, narrow this for me. Are we talking about famous people, someone from history?
we're talking about
current
we're
friends?
talking about a famous absurdist sketch show. Two guys used to be on, I think, Cartoon Network.
Oh, Tim and Eric.
Tim and Eric. Thank you. Jesus Christ. Don't smoke weed, kids. Or do it, but in moderation. Tim and Eric, for example, is like, once you understand that what you're watching is not linear and it is not in any way heading towards some sort of predictive process of the shared experience now becomes an understanding of they subvert that or rebel against it.
It's like concentric circles. Like the largest circle is the agreement that you have with an audience entering into this realm.
Yes.
So like, is this a slow, patient thing? Are we doing, is this going to be readings of poetry from our lives and true experiences?
Yeah.
Is this going to be an adventure in improvised clowning? Like, what is this thing? And then it narrows from there. Like, now what is our voice as a team? What is the way we get a suggestion or whatever? Do you think that an evening of programming could have a bunch of could have an absurdist or surreal team back to back with a straightforward relationship scene team back to back? Like, could a bunch of those exist on the same Lego car?
Maybe. Again, like going back to my idea of earning your way to fact to fiction, I wonder if you'd want to hit the audience programming wise, if you'd want to hit the audience with something more human and grounded first.
Sure.
And then allow them to grow into the absurdity.
I agree with that. Yeah, and just running order wise, your programming or your running order in anything should always have the same shape as your scenes. It's going to heighten
100%.
Yeah,
I
same
agree.
reason like short form shows should close with the improvised song.
Yes.
Or the silliest, biggest, most impressive things. Sketch shows should end with the messiest sketch or the one where you're running into the audience. If you open with that, it's hard to settle people back into just like, I'm working at a newspaper.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that, and I could be wrong. I don't have a ton of,
I mean, I think say like intuition and I don't run programming on a 7 nights a week basis, but I definitely produce a lot and try to tinker with programming here and there. And I don't know. My instincts tell me that definitely seems to be, probably the safer choice. Yeah.
Talk to me about, because you are someone who is like a voracious producer. You created that show I'm Too Effing High.
Yeah.
You do an improvised sitcom
How I
called
Met Your Sitcom.
Yeah. And there's a Cheers spinoff of
Logan's.
that. Logan's, like a bar. Yeah. You produce these shared experience shows. You've started doing a tournament for teams in town. You do the Sunset Social, which is an outdoor improv event.
Yeah.
Where does that come from? And first, like, where does the hunger and the drive come from? And then second, where does the ability to do all of that come from?
Wow, where does the drive come from? That's a good question. I guess like the drive comes from, a little bit of a rebellion from a, and again, I didn't come on the show to like necessarily, bash institutions. It kind of came up organically, but I think part of it comes from a little bit of a rebellion of a lack of control of being able to always or not being always able to dictate what kind of show that you want to do or experimental type of stuff that you want to do. And I think maybe partly it comes from that. I think I just also really enjoy community types. I enjoy collaboration. I enjoy the process of, I have an idea for this. I'd love to collaborate with some friends on it. I'd love to like get some, people who I think would be great for this and go from there, I guess. That's a good question. Because honestly, I don't think I ever at this point in my life, going back 20 years when I first started this, I don't think I ever would have envisioned myself being a teacher or a producer or any of this stuff. So it's a really good question. I do enjoy it a lot.
And you seem to have just unlimited energy for it, which is very unstoner of you.
It's super unstoner of me. Yeah, that's a really good point.
Also a Shakespeare word, unstoner.
Famous weed smoker.
Was he?
He was.
Really?
I mean, that's what they say.
Huh.
Yeah.
I didn't know people were smoking weed back then.
Oh, yeah.
That's what those big collars are for. They hide their little joints in those.
Yeah, it was just a big vaporizer.
Oh, yeah. Got it. Okay,
they were vaping back then.
Dude, pass your neck bong.
Your neck bong.
Want to smoke your neck. It's something that that's included under that umbrella also is that you seem to be inspired. Like you have all these ideas. Talk to me about the origin of I'm Too Effing High and your experience doing that show. It's such a unique show. Will it ever come back?
It might come back. So like I am a longtime stoner. And one of the things that people would constantly ask me is, how do you improvise high? Which I don't always, and there's varying degrees of high, and my cannabis consumption is, kind of tied into a lot of aspects of my way through this reality. But I always thought that was really funny to me because I was always like, I don't know, I just I feel like it's fine, and then improvisers would be like, I could never.
I can't even have a normal conversation high.
Totally, and so I would
so
have
bizarre.
This conversation with so many friends, so many improvisers, that it got me thinking like, I should figure out a way to do a show where I get improvisers high, but not just do like a montage, like actually put them on the spot, see what it feels like to go like, okay, Susie, you're high. Where are you right now in terms of on a scale of 1 to 10? How high are you? Okay, I'm going to give you a prompt. You have to improvise your way through this prompt, right? You're going to give
Can I say one of the ones you gave me?
Yeah, if you could. Please do.
It was such a softball, and for me and my reference bases, and I remember knowing that it was a softball and being like, "Wow, I can't even hit a softball right now." It was you're on you're on Great British Baking Show, but it takes place in the realm of fairy tales. And you're talking about how to make the cake that you're gonna make.
Oh shit!
It's talk about a layup for me, and I could not even find the basketball.
That's so funny. I mean, like I remember you doing that show and you crushed it.
I don't think I did.
Yeah, but I think that it just kind of came from that, and I guess I will say you were asking like what makes me want to do these different things. My personality is such that like I'm a big follow through guy.
Yeah.
Like if I have an idea, if I don't try it, it like bothers me. Mm-hmm. Same thing with like How I Met Your Sitcom. I was like, man, I really am like thinking a lot about could the Herald form in some small way inspire, the genre of sitcom? Like could they meld together in some way? And I kept thinking about it and yeah.
Yeah, describe that show for the audience.
So How I Met Your Sitcom is basically it's an improvised sitcom where so I love genre. When I teach I like to teach tones. And the 3 tones that I teach are hypernaturalism, exaggerated reality, and genre. Just a really quick breakdown. Hypernaturalism, they're all based in reality, right? The realities that the scenes exist in. So hypernaturalism is trying to capture the reality that we live in every single day, right? It comes from Stanislavski in Russia and kind of that whole like The conversation in acting for the last 800 years has been, how real should we be, right? On stage, should we be really exaggerated? Should we be really real? That conversation is still going on. Exaggerated reality is scenes that take place primarily with archetypes, right? It can still have a voice of reason, but it's like, two gym bros, and one of them is still the voice of reason, but we're saying in this reality, everybody's a little exaggerated.
So akin to like an SNL sketch.
SNL is almost completely exaggerated reality. And then the final one is genre. Genre is the style of existing in the style of existence that somebody else created, right? And sitcom is one of those genres. And within the genre of sitcom, there's so many fun little subgenres. And I thought it would be fun to try to play Harold's. Harold's a loose term here. But use the Herald structure with a fully genre, sitcom, and then slice up the sitcoms into different styles. The family sitcom, the workplace sitcom. We've done the like CW style all black sitcom. We've done kind of the Sex in the City style sitcom. Just trying to capture different ones. And but feeling not parody. We're not parodying those sitcoms. We're trying to do our own version of that style, be it Cheers or Friends or whatever it is,
and break down the structure, like the roadmap of how a Herald maps over that.
So the structure, the way that it works is, somebody goes out and interviews the audience, depending upon, and that's how we generate the ideas for the show.
And that's under the sort of genre of the warm up comedian of the live studio audience. Yeah.
So we try to keep it close to the idea of like kind of watching a taping of a sitcom.
Right. You go to Seinfeld, you're sitting there, you're all excited. A guy comes out and like, hey, where are you from? And blah, blah, blah.
Exactly. And so we've got the warm-up comedian. They come out, they talk to the audience. If it's a workplace sitcom, then they'll talk to the audience about workplace stuff. That's what we pull from. And then from there,
the actors are backstage, listening intently to this and flagging their prominent characters and shiny plot points. And,
100%. Yeah. Thinking about how they want to, connect to the shared experience of the information that's kind of sitting out there. And then the first act is just like first beats of a Herald. Kind of can see it, or I'm sorry, no, that's not true. Cause we've adjusted the way that it's done. The first act is a mono scene, but with the beats of a Herald, if that makes sense. So it's all in the same location. The second act is then, kind of like second beats, mainly time dash, or character dash, not really analogous, but seeing some of those characters out in the world potentially. So, if you're, in the show, if you're like the assistant manager, and we know you're the assistant manager and you're a control freak, maybe we see you briefly at home in a domestic situation with your, partner and kids and like, explore that aspect of it. And then the third act is a mono scene back in the original location. So, if the original location is the break room, let's say the sitcom is called The Break Room. And it's all of like, the break room at this workplace. That's where it starts. It branches out in the second act. And then in the third act, it ends up right back there. Yeah.
And when I did it, I don't know if you still do this, but you had another team of people coming on in between acts doing commercial breaks.
Correct.
And those sort of were like the group games.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes. That is correct. We have a group of people come out and do which was this has actually been one of the more challenging parts of it, because we're asking long form improvisers to kind of do some short form games. We give them a prompt of a product on a screen, and they have to do an improvised commercial for that product. And they're made up products, and one of the challenges of it too, I think, is like that we've found is making sure the product isn't so weird and funny. The visual of it on the screen doesn't make it harder for the improvisers. That's been really challenging.
It's hard to parody a comedy. You got
it is.
Yeah. It's got the straighter something is, the easier it is to be funny about it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
We're racing towards being over time here.
Oh,
but,
shit. Yeah, of course.
But we're not done yet.
Oh, my God.
What are your favorite types of characters to play?
Arrogant dumb guy. I love playing an arrogant person who's very stupid.
Can you initiate a scene as that guy?
Oh man.
Or just give me an out of context example.
I'll give you like a guy who's convinced that he can combine a restaurant and an escape room at the same time. Like that, you know what I mean? Like that sort of like, all right, I have this killer idea. Don't tell anybody. This is TM'd, trademarked. You know what that means?
Yeah, you just said what it meant.
Okay, good. Well, some people think TM is transcendental
meditation. Yeah,
it
is
heard
that.
Of it.
It is also that.
Oh, okay.
It's transit. But never would I think that in this context. And also, you said TM trademarked. Do you know what that is? Anyway. What's the idea? I'm so stoked. By the way, Mom's gonna be really pleased that you're moving out finally.
Yeah. I'm happy for her. I'm happy. I think she'll miss me. But
what's the idea?
All right, the idea. Ready for this?
I think so. Yeah.
A restaurant and an escape room at the same time. The clues hidden in the food.
And the goal is to leave the restaurant as soon as possible?
Yeah, I guess that would be the goal. I mean, it's a restaurant, so you've got to eat, of course.
Right. But you're eating the clues.
You're eating, well, not eating the clues exactly. It's more like it's more like, oh, look, the soup, this onion soup is delicious. Oh, wait a second, there's a key in here.
There's a key in the soup.
There's a key in the soup. Oh, interesting. This must be a clue. And then, you're enjoying your soup.
So you're telling them very clearly that you might find a key in your food. They're clearly not going to.
I was thinking of it more as like it's all a surprise.
I'm eating my soup.
Yeah.
And I clink down because I've bitten on a giant piece of rusty metal.
Yeah. Well,
I think my first thought is this must be a clue. This restaurant must be something I'm trying to escape.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want my money back. I want my money back, Harvey. I want my money back.
There's no refunds. We don't do refunds. You didn't pay to be here.
No, I'm saying I want my money back that I lent you when you said you were going to make a life change and you were going to get out of Mom's basement. I want my actual money back.
And here comes jealousy rearing its ugly, ugly head yet again. Okay.
Scene. Yeah, I love that guy.
I love playing that character in varying degrees of arrogance and dumbness.
Right. Yeah. I love arrogant dumb also.
Yeah.
And just missing the point, but not knowing that they're missing the point.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Where are you headed, or what do you think is next in your ether?
In my ether?
Yeah, the ether of your improv journey, of comedy, do you have any like visions that are percolating right now?
For me and my comedy, so I think on the producing side of things, and you and I actually had a really great conversation about this recently at Sunset Social. I think on the producing side of things, the place that I'm heading towards is more ambitious and interesting uses of improv and indie improv, and finding ways of packaging it.
Yeah.
So that it is, can be utilized in ways that are truly, as Sharna would say, interesting. on a personal, with my own personal comedy, I'm still interested in trying to make my instrument,
That clarinet.
I really want to learn it. And I can't blow. That's my issue.
Yeah.
I can't blow air out. No, I want, I'm not much of a character player. I'm tinkering a little bit with my instrument to be a little bit more. You'll never see me do broad SNL style characters. It's just not my instrument. But I'm always trying to stretch my acting a little bit, and figure out. Like I said earlier, to me, game is the guide and relationship is the destination. And I'm interested in my work in trying to discover more about how the game affects the people involved on stage.
Playing with emotional sensitivity, maybe
yeah.
allowing yourself to get moved into some different corners than you normally would as your chill kind of standard self.
100%.
Yeah,
100%. I think my factory setting is kind of. I could easily just be, a commentary straight man. You know what I mean? I could get off of that and I didn't mean to say get off on that. I could get by on that just fine. But I'm interested in more than just that. I want to stretch into just trying to see what I am, what can my instrument do.
So you head into a show with kind of that minor instruction running in the back of your computer
Before every show, this is what I say to myself in my head, because my factory setting is logic, right? Before every show, I tell myself emotion is funnier than logic. And because my factory setting is logic, that helps me. I'll always be logical, right? But I need to be more emotional. Some people will always be emotional and they need to be more logical. But that's just kind of what I say to myself right now before a show.
The logic side manifests as you kind of commenting and framing and describing things, rather than reacting and engaging.
Exactly.
Got it.
Exactly.
Man, this has been incredible. What would you like to plug, and where can people find shared experience stuff? And
I would love to just plug the Shared Experience Studio. Yeah, we're on Instagram. You can check us out. We have a website, thesharedexperiencestudio.com. We're less than 2 years old and still finding our way in this whole thing. And we're trying to put on cheap $5 shows every Wednesday night at the Yard, which is a really cool nonprofit theater. Also, Sunset Social is a new monthly show that Susie's a part of as well. It's at a beautiful outdoor venue called
Gorgeous.
In the Meantime. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's kind of we're trying to create comedy's version of like Cinespia if you're in LA. It's like an outdoor,
like open bar and real vibey.
Open bar. We're gonna have chef pop-ups. Like it's a whole social thing. So check that out on the website as well. And I think that How I Met Your Sitcom will pop up here and there.
Great.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks for being here, James.
Thanks for having me, Susie.
If you have a question about improv that you would like me to ask a future guest, email it to yesalsopod@gmail.com and I will get it on the show. If you're a fan of the show, follow us on Instagram @yesalsopod. And please help us out by liking, rating, reviewing, clicking, sending, talking, and blasting us to your improv communities. That will help us out a lot. If you're a theater who would like to host us for a live recording and improv show, let us know at yesalsopod@gmail.com. A huge shout out to Ryan Rosenberg, who produced this thing with his generous help and his unlimited knowledge about all things podcast. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next week. No, we won't, Susie. That's not how podcasts work. They will see. They won't even see us. They will listen to us. So it's actually the opposite of both things you said. Thanks for listening, and you will listen to us next week. Maybe. We don't know.